Have you seen the new marketing strategy? You probably have. You just didn't realize what it was. They call it being vulnerable, being authentic. But really, if you really break it down, it's just people crying on camera. It's a thing now, people. In the past, we've seen this before. Someone would share a story or an experience from their past, and in doing so, something comes up. They remember what it's like being in that point. And in a moment of vulnerability and authenticity, they maybe shed a tear, a single tear, or maybe they even flat out cry. And the rally behind them is enormous. People love it. We're commenting. We want to support them. We want to fight even the people who made them cry. Like it's a great way to build community and get love and support. But that's not what we're doing anymore. You see, because like all great things, marketers got a hold of it, and people who are desperate for attention got a hold of it and ruined it entirely. And now, literally, they skipped the middleman. No more explanation of a story or an experience. They're just crying on camera. And it turns out this phenomenon has a name. It's called victim narcissism. Now, the book that explains this, I'm gonna get to here in a minute. Before I do, let me kind of give you some context to this. Well, like I mentioned before, people would share a story and or experience, and in doing so, they would get emotional. However, they're skipping the middleman entirely, and they're literally just having a picture or a video of them just crying with the story in the caption. Now, I know that doesn't seem like a big deal. I just want you to think about for a moment how this plays out. So now, and in that moment, you don't think to yourself, man, I should probably call a friend, or maybe I should reach out to family or someone to talk to. You go, I know what to do. Let me pull out my phone and take a picture of myself. Is that weird to anybody else, or is it just me? Am I the asshole here? Now, it reminds me of this friend that I had actually not too long ago. So this friend was an outstanding marketer. He was literally brilliant, and his business was constantly growing. But while he's growing his business, he starts to notice he's getting anxiety. He's about to launch a new product, and he starts to get anxiety, and then also has this bout of depression during the launch and when things get really, really tough. And by the way, I can relate to this. There's been plenty of times when I'm incredibly stressed or I'm pushing it too hard or whatever, and I just get hit with crazy anxiety, and I've even had a panic attack. Totally understandable. Now, in this one particular time, he decides, you know what? I want to document the journey. I want to tell people that it's normal to have anxiety. Super admirable, right? Like, I love the fact that in a day where everyone on Instagram and YouTube is just flexing, right? Like, they're showing off the car, they're talking about how much money they make, but they never really get into detail about the hard part of entrepreneurship or the hard part of having a successful job or whatever it is that you're doing. So I love the fact that he was like, in this moment of vulnerability, I want to share, and something interesting happened. So what happened was he got tons of attention, tons of likes, comments, and all this, but also he got tons of leads. You see, people loved the fact that he was so vulnerable and authentic, they started buying his course. Now, what's interesting about this is this. He didn't stop there. He kept doing it. So every single time there was a launch he had, there would be a vulnerable post of him crying sometimes, or him talking about his anxiety and depression, and more people would buy his courses. So on like clockwork, he'd launch a course, he'd get anxiety and depression, he'd make a post about it, he'd make more sales. And this reminds me of this one book called The Courage to Be Disliked. So in this book, there's actually a perfect example of this point. So the idea is that we do things that serve us. Now, it's up to us whether or not we continue to do that, but in any choice we really make, it is serving us. And here's what I mean. So the book, like I mentioned, it talks about this individual who struggles with anxiety, and he can't even go outside. He gets like really stressed and over anxious. And so his parents, who he's living with, he's a little bit older, in his 20s, whatever, and he's still living with his parents. And his parents decide to continue to shelter him. Now, in doing so, he continues to have anxiety. So what is the point? Like, how is this serving him? Well, he gets attention from his parents. And so in doing so, he's getting attention every time he gets anxiety. And so you further prove the point, or it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, I think is what I'm trying to say here. Because I get anxiety, I get attention. So what's interesting is, and when I asked him, this was a few years back, the guy that I mentioned, a friend of mine, who he was constantly making these type of posts to essentially make more sales. I said, hey, could it be possible that you are guaranteeing that you're going to get anxiety because you continue to talk about it? And when you do that, you get something in return. You get attention, you get sales, you get money. And so could it be possible that you're causing your own anxiety and depression? Of course, he admitted the answer was yes. Now again, super admirable here, right? And I appreciate that he was honest about it. But here's the thing, he didn't do anything about it. What's interesting is this is very similar to what people are doing online today, whether they know it or not. And even if they have a real issue, right? Like they constantly do struggle with anxiety, by continuing to talk about it and getting love and support around it, you are almost guaranteeing that you're not gonna ever change it. Now, I wanna be clear before I get lit up in the comments, and I'm sure that I will, I'm fully aware, anxiety, depression, bouts of sadness, whatever you wanna call it, all those things are real. I know, I've experienced them. But what I also know though, is that if you truly wanna get rid of those things and change those things, making a post about it on Instagram is probably not gonna do that. Which actually brings me to a deeper rooted problem I think in society we all have. And I talked about this earlier, it's the victim narcissism. All right, so this idea was made popular by Dr. Ramani, who wrote this book, Don't You Know Who I Am? It's a book about narcissism. And what most people got out of it was that there's people that are constantly just in it for themselves, and it's the typical narcissism, like American Psycho type stuff, right? But there's another type of narcissism, and it's called the victim narcissist. Every time I'm working out in the garage and I want to film, it's always this like difficult thing with a tripod. I'm trying to figure it out, but it's like too short. And I never considered that I should probably I can just use my car as a giant tripod, so that way we can get this. Also, my wife cannot stand when I record in the garage because it's always a giant mess, but whatever, authenticity. So anyway, I was talking about Dr. Ramani's book, and this is what she said about, that's what she said. That's not funny. Anyway, this is what they said about victim narcissism. This form of narcissism involves individuals who habitually play the victim to garner attention, sympathy, and validation from others. Now, again, what does that sound like? It sounds like somebody who is making a post about them crying on social media to garner attention. This is a form of narcissism. Now, this book, Don't You Know Who I Am, right? When it came out, everyone was calling everyone narcissism, and I don't want to make it about that. I don't want to make a video basically calling another subset of people narcissism, because technically it's a spectrum from my understanding. It's a spectrum of people, meaning everyone's a narcissist. Everyone is in it for themselves to some capacity. It's just how malicious are you in the intent, right? Like, do you know that you're taking advantage of people and taking advantage of your emotional state to gain something? And these individuals, what do they gain? They gain attention, in some cases notoriety. They gain money in some cases if they're a marketer, because as you grow attention online, and if you're a business owner like me, you then make money because those people then go to the link in the bio, they buy affiliate stuff, they buy your products, your offerings. And I'm also fully aware, to be clear, it's a bit hypocritical of me, isn't it? Like, I'm aware of the hypocrisy here. Like, even this video is kind of playing on people's emotions a bit. Like, I know people are gonna be annoyed by this and are annoyed by this, and because of that emotion, they're going to watch this. And a subset of the people that watch this are possibly gonna go in the link in my bio, or my description rather, and look into my programs and offerings. Like, I'm fully aware that I'm no better than anybody else, and you could argue that I too am probably a giant narcissist, because let's face it, most of the work that I do tries to garner attention. Like, I make content to get attention. Like I said though, it's just the way that it is, it's kind of weird. And I almost feel bad because me making this video isn't necessarily I'm not gonna continue to be mad about it, right? After this video is done. After this video is done, I said what I had to say about it, and it's over. The problem with the people that are crying on social media, playing victim, is that victim mentality carries on. It doesn't go anywhere because you're rewarding that behavior. And the truth of the matter is, our society in general, and I paused a really long time there because someone was walking by my house, and as long as I've been making content, it's still really weird talking to myself in a camera when other people are around. Anyway, so we create this environment where it benefits you to be a victim, but in just a short moment. Like in this moment, if you're playing victim, you get attention and maybe even money, again, in the example we gave earlier. The problem is, if you play victim long enough, you start to notice you don't get what you want anymore, because then you see a victim mindset in anything and in everything, which then leads to you not getting what you want and you continue to be the victim. Like in the long run, it's not advantageous to be the victim in life. And I know this because I played victim for most of my life until probably recently. The thing that I want to reiterate here is it is not a bad thing to share a vulnerable moment. There's something, again, super admirable about getting in front of a camera and telling people what's really going on in your life. I've done it plenty of times, and honestly, it is helpful. It does make you feel like, okay, I'm not hiding anymore. I'm not, pretending like everything is okay when everything's not. And you do get tons of people that say, hey, absolutely, I can relate to this. I think where it goes a little extreme is, again, and you're constantly taking pictures of crying, trying to get attention. Now, I heard a friend of mine once, Molly Dare, she was like a conflict or a PR specialist around conflict for people, I think. And then she also has like a pretty cool podcast herself. Now, Molly Dare said this again to me years ago, and I thought it was great because I remember during this time, I'm trying to actually be more authentic, I guess. I'm trying to be more vulnerable and share stories, and because I grew up in a world where you don't share anything. Anyway, she had this kind of framework that I thought was brilliant. She said, share from a scar, never a wound. The idea is, once the situation is over, you have your lessons learned, then yeah, share the lessons learned. Share how difficult it was, the fact that you were crying a lot over it. You can share everything, but at least at this point, it's healed. You're not reopening a wound, and you're not further trauma dumping on people. You're just sharing a life lesson, and I think there's some true thought leadership to that. Like think about like the person that not just started it, but like really made vulnerability popular, and that was Brene Brown. Even herself wasn't sharing from a wound. She was telling a story about stuff that happened to her years ago and the shame behind it and blah, blah, blah. It was stuff that she overcame and wants to help other people overcome it too. Once you get to the mountaintop, then yeah, it makes sense to yell down and go, hey, here's how you overcome it. All I'm saying is I think maybe going down the deep end a little bit, picking up a phone in the middle of a vulnerable moment to yourself and crying to yourself and taking a picture of it probably ain't the move, but I don't know. What do I know? I'm a nobody. I want to hear from you though. What are your thoughts about this phenomenon that is victim narcissism, this idea behind crying on camera? What are your thoughts? Leave it in the comments below. As always, thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. And I'm gonna get after this workout, and I'll catch you in the next video.